On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, free agency is here and the Avalanche were active. A lot of low-term, low AAV numbers like we expected, but do we like them? New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on social media, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. And make sure you're subscribed to our subtext. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. All right, sir. It's free agency episode. It's probably going to be from beginning to end free agency heavy because the Avalanche, maybe surprisingly, we're very active on day one. We knew what they had to do, and it's like they did all of it in one day, which we'll talk about. But just everything going on around the league, a lot of money thrown around, Kyle. I think it was over $1 billion in just that one day, in over 100 something signings and moves. So I love this day. What'd you think overall for free agency day one?
Yeah, and I think 50 of those moves occurred in the first hour of official free agency.
Maybe even like minus hour, like before free agency even started. Like, why do we even have this rule? If no one's going to abide by it, why do we even have it? Because we knew about signings hours before the noon get-go.
We knew about signings, but the Drouin one was just, it felt like 3.5 days on that to be revealed. But when it finally was, you were excited and you're like, finally, the Avs are done. And then you lean back in your chair, and then they got the band back together of every role player and accessory of former Avs history. They come on back.
Well, here's all of them.
Yeah, bring it.
Jonathan Drouin, Yoel Kiviranta, Calvin DeHaan, Jacob McDonald, welcome back. TJ Tynan, welcome back. Parker Kelly and Callie Rosen, welcome back. So yeah, a lot of familiar faces, and let's start with Jonathan Drouin, because that was the name, right? That we've been talking about him for a while. We talked about him yesterday. It got done fairly quickly after the noon start time. I think it was, right? It was only like maybe an hour or so. It was right around I want to say about an hour or so after. So things were in the works, and you can, it was okay. We didn't get the right before you officially became a free agent, but we got it done. A 1 year, $2.5 million contract. There were a couple contracts that came out before his that I had mentioned, put up on social media. One was Matt Duchene, who stayed right where he was for $3 million, which is still a steal. And someone pointed out, well, he is getting paid from Nashville, which is true. That is very true. So sometimes guys do go other places for less money because they're getting paid somewhere else. That's understandable. And the other was Trennan, who goes to Minnesota for $3.5 million. So he's getting paid more than Matt Duchene. Go figure. So in my head, I'm like, how does it every time a move happens, you kind of say, well, how does that affect my guy? And I couldn't tell. I couldn't, like, how do you justify those two signings for those two guys that are polar opposites? And, obviously this was already in the works, so maybe it really didn't come into play too much. But in the end, Drouin gets a $2.5 million deal for 1 year. So we're going to be right back here again next year, Kyle.
Yeah, and everything we were talking about in our grades yesterday of Mikko Rantanen, talking about you're going to see career numbers with a contract year. You're going to see that in spades with Jonathan Drouin. He's comfortable on this Avalanche team. He loves playing with Nate. And you saw his production almost hit 60 points last year. Yeah, with Drouin almost hitting 60 points last year, this contract screams, okay, that was good. What else can you do? And you feel like, and especially with all the other moves that you mentioned, they were all for about a year.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
basic. Like, we have you a team. You're back with Nate, your good buddy. If you could do that again, we're going to look at this contract and we're going to make not only draw it out, but put some more money in your pocket. And you heard that he took a little bit less to stay with Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a mutual, I could show you more, then show me more, and then we'll talk about this next year. And we'll have more answers on the two floating contracts that everybody loves talking about with Landy and Nuke at the end of the year. But I love this deal, and I'm even more excited as a fan to see what Drouin is going to bring to this team with a full year of offseason and working with this team.
Yeah, I think it's I don't feel like the at the forefront of it is, show me deal. Like, sure, that's in there. I mean, if you have a 1-year deal, I think any 1-year deal is just it's a prove it contract, not just for you or the team you're playing with, but the rest of the league. So I think I heard the Rangers were in on Drew, and they were one of the teams that did want to bring him in. Probably could have offered him more, but he stayed. I think he's smart to stay. This is a great fit for him. He knows it's good. And if he can replicate and even beat what now he's off front, he doesn't need that buffer period to get going. He knows exactly how this team operates, where he fits. So you would expect numbers to improve. So is it a show me deal? I don't think that's the reason why the Avs went 1 year on it. It just works out that way because it is 1 year, and hey, like he does what he's supposed to do, and sure, he benefits off that. I think it's just 1 year. It's because, like you said, all of these contracts today are one or only two guys got a 2-year deal. I don't think Callie Rosen got a 2-year deal. Parker Kelly and Jacob McDonald got 2-year deals. Everybody else is a 1-year deal. That's just the hell that the Avalanche are in right now. So they're just going to bide their time, plug these holes, because that's really what they have to do is plug holes. Outside of Drouin, right? He's a top 6 guy. He's a top line guy. Everybody else is fill in the blanks, fill in the holes. So I think for Drouin, it's and even for the Avalanche, we are going to see how this year plays out with the two guys you mentioned, Gabe Landeskog, Val Nichushkin, and then we have a much better understanding. And this will benefit you if you outplay what you did the first year with us. If we have an idea where we're going with these guys, that will benefit you. I mean, the downside of that is if Landeskog comes back, I don't want to say it's a downside, but maybe for Drouin it is. If Landeskog comes back, no ill effects. He looks good. Okay, then he's in the mix. If Val Nichushkin comes back, you have no problems with him. I mean, I know, but you have no problems with him. You might not be able to sign Drouin because he's going to need now even more of an increase. So that's down the road. But for right now, it's a very team-friendly deal. I think he knows that. I think he knows, hey, I just got to put in one more year of what I did, even then some, and I'll cash in somewhere. If it's not with the Avalanche, it's not going to be with the Avalanche.
Can I go back to the show me contract conversation?
Mm-hmm.
If this was a 3-year, 4-year, $2.5 million contract, well, if let's say his points are around the 20 to 30 range, do you start scratching your head saying this was the one contract you wanted to go out and get, and he's already regressing? And then you look at the rest of the pieces, you're like, okay, yeah, this is filler, but then what are you going to do next year? And then you're going to have this conversation like, how valuable is this contract? What did we just sign up for? Did we purchase a good season and then you get a lot of 20, 30, 40-point seasons out of him? Is that going to be a success? Is this going to be the panic button? Is this going to be the, hey, this is not working? He had one good year and then it's back to normal Jonathan Drouin where he was bouncing around? Is that going to, I feel like that's where this show me thing is, like, show me consistency. Like, if you can dance around this 50, 60 point, we'll pay you and we'll give you term. But I feel like it's a little much to sign him up for more than
Like a
this
5,
1
6
year.
year deal.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I can see
because
that.
he's had in his career, he's had 3 seasons of 50 points or more, and you're basically signing on to the promise of that.
Mhm.
But more often than not, it's dancing around that 30-point range, 20, 30, 40-point range, and you really want to see what you have in Drouin, and he has no reason not to show you the best version of Drouin this season.
Yeah, you can't really deny that there is maybe some of that in there. Again, I don't think it's the focal point of why the Avs went
No.
1 year. But is it in the back of their mind? Sure. I think it might be, because I think as much as he struggled when he was on Montreal, to come in and do what he did in 1 year, I think they're pretty confident that, hey, this system works for this guy. So I don't really feel like they're expecting any regression from him. Could it happen? Absolutely, but I don't think they're expecting that. So I think the 1 year, a lot has, sure. I mean, maybe that's a little slice of the pie, sure, but a lot of it is the cap crunch that they are in. Could you give him? I don't. Maybe he didn't want to go 3, 4, 5 years at 2.5. He's not going to sign that deal.
Yeah, no.
And the other part of it is Mikko. Like, that is coming into play too. Everything the Avs do for this offseason heading into next year is the Mikko contract. So that comes into play as well. There's a lot more that we got to talk about here with these signings and how all of this works, big picture, because the Avs made a lot of signings. Just ran through them. We'll talk about some more of them, but they're in the hole right now. If you look at cap friendly, if right where they are right now, if you bring Vanachuskin back, they're over the cap. So something needs to happen here. And what is that? So let's kind of get into that. We'll do that coming up next. All right, FanDuel, we love sports and we love them so much. We never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and are really over for the NHL, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. And all we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, in caps, people, all customers, with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to fanduel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so continuing on with the free agency day one, and the Avalanche. Drouin is done, and you got him for another year, and I think a lot of Avalanche fans are happy about that. So those the two biggest guys in Middlestat and Drouin, you get them done. The other guys, we listed them off. What do you think? Like, out of Kiviranta, I think we're both happy that he's coming back. I think he's a great depth piece. I thought he showed up in the playoffs. He might be another guy getting another just a full season with the Avalanche and an off season going to next year. I think he can have another pretty solid year doing what he does. Jacob McDonald, he's back. He'll be one of those up and down guys. We loved him when he was here. Just the heart that he played with. You get TJ Tynan, who comes back, another one who's just going to be up and down if they need him. Callie Rosen, he's back. Same situation there.
For only St. Louis Blues games. Right into Jordan Binnington.
Right into Binnington, and then we'll blame somebody else this time.
Yep.
The ones that I really like, Kyle, are obviously outside of Drouin, the DeHaan and the Parker Kelly signings.
Yeah.
Calvin DeHaan, I've liked, and I mentioned him a couple times in years past of someone that maybe they could go after. He's kind of, it's weird because it's like Calvin DeHaan is like your replacement for like Jack Johnson, and Parker Kelly is your replacement for like Cogliano and even like Duhaime, if you want to say like that style of player. So they went out and they replaced guys that they lost with guys, that kind of are in that same mode. And I think DeHaan and Kelly could be pretty good on this team, if you ask me.
And Kelly's going to be here for a little bit longer than all these other signings.
Two full years. Hey, now slow down.
So, and I like what he brings. I like his style. It's going to be a good addition to the team. And I feel like around like All-Star break, for whatever the all international game that they're playing.
Oh, the Four
I feel like
yeah.
He's really going to find his legs in his role about that time. DeHaan, he's going to be perfect. He's going to be a nice utility, just a Swiss Army knife. He's going to fit this Avalanche system really well. I love that. And like, I understand like getting the former players back because they understand the system and they're cheap. You could plug them in. They know the speed. They know how to play with Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. Let them go. But none of them are, other than Jacob McDonald, nothing's like wowing me. When I see them come back, you're like, oh, okay, cool. I remember this.
But that's, that's where the Avs are with this offseason. This is what we were expecting. Like they have their big names signed and locked up. So they're not going out and signing the big name. You might get that at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
But you're not getting it in free agency. And there was some people that were kind of upset. Like they're seeing all these names go off the board. It's like, why weren't the Avs involved in that? Why weren't they involved with that? And it's like, you can't sign them all, people. Like that's why there's a cap involved here. And the Avs have their top guys locked up. So this is what teams in their situation do. They go out and they, like I said, they plug those holes. You'd like to see like maybe more term, just because you don't want to keep doing this year after year. Like if you get a guy that's not like a depth piece that works, like your Coglianos, you sign them for a little bit more. So that's short up. But I get why the Avalanche are doing it this way right now. But I want to talk about, if you got a thought, go for it. But after you say what you got to say, like there's some cap issues going right now, which is no surprise, but go ahead.
And that's kind of where I was going to go. And this will transition into that point. Everyone has to understand this team was put together to be on the ice to evaluate both the contracts of Gabe Landeskog and or Valeri Nichushkin. You need to see what you have there. And I know everybody sees this Avalanche team sitting in the hole right now and saying, they're going to get rid of Nuke. It's finally happening. No, I hate to break it to you. I don't think that's what's about to happen.
I didn't. So I'll say it this way. Like I didn't think it was going to happen. And I still think it won't, because I just don't know if there's a buyer out there for him.
Exactly.
But I think the Avalanche are working like heck to make that happen. Because right now, if you look at Cap Friendly, you have Cap Friendly and Puckpedia. Those are, with Cap Friendly going away in a few days. They have the Avs projected cap space right now at 5.56, whatever. There's more numbers there, and I'm not going to bore you with all of them. 5.56 million in cap space. That is not including Val Nichushkin's 6.125. So if you include that, they are already over. And they still don't have a full roster. Even with the guys that they signed today, they still need to sign more. So how do you make this work, Kyle? Like, right now you have some. If you go over to Puckpedia, here's another interesting one. Puckpedia does include more guys on the Avs roster. Like on Cap Friendly, they include Kovalenko. Puckpedia does not, but Puckpedia does include Val Nichushkin. So they've removed Kovalenko, added Nichushkin. That puts them they only have $300,000 left to spend. And you have 17 players out of 23 on a roster. Somebody is getting moved here, Kyle. You have to do something. There is no way that you can sign 6 more guys with only $300,000. Like it's impossible. The minimum is not $300,000. It's twice that and a little bit more. So somebody's getting moved here. And I really feel like the way that the Avalanche are doing this is with the idea of the names that we throw out all the time. Sam Girard, Ross Colton, Josh Manson. Those guys did nothing wrong to be thrown into this whole fire of we might have to move a contract Val Nichushkin did. So because of that, I really feel like the Avalanche are working overtime to try to move that contract. And I've kind of changed my mind on them. Well, I shouldn't say I've changed my mind. I feel like they've always been trying to do it, but maybe they're going into overtime trying to move that, because it can't continue the way that it's continuing with them signing guys and needing to fill out this roster with zero money to do it.
And see, and the thing that really complicates this, if you're going to go after your Manson, your Gerard, if you're going to go after Ross Colton and try and move that contract and package Nuke, you're talking over $10 million that you're trying to move off your team. And who's going to take that on with the chance of what is Nuke going to do here? It's a big gamble. And then what do? Do you put, let's just throw out just an Eagle, 2 Eagles, a draft pick, and Nichushkin? What is you alleviate the Nuke contract, but you're still having to compensate for this by removing more pieces of the Avalanche roster that you really can't afford to do right now because you need to put a team together. The Avs are in a really tricky spot, and I agree that they are trying to get Nichushkin out of here, but the deeper this goes into the season, it's going to be harder and harder to do, and they're going to eventually have to do something to put the rest of the team together. Are you going to start calling up Eagles? Is that where they're going to go? You're still going to have to pay them, and it's still not going to be cheap because that's a lot of roster spots to fill. The Avs, yes, all the signings were wonderful, well and good, and I know what their intentions are, but right now, as we sit, there's a problem.
Yeah, there is. And you know, I think it could be something like the deal they made for Sean Walker, to say, like, you know, we'll give you a fit first, but we also want you to take Ryan Johansson off our hands. So I think it won't be Sam Girard and Val Nichushkin. That is way too much. Even with the issues Val Nichushkin has, you are not just saying, hey, here's a deal for Sam Girard, so that alleviates some cap space, and here, take Val Nichushkin and give us a 4th round pick. Like, that deal is not happening. But it could be like you might have to dip into a prospect pool and give somebody a couple prospects to take Val Nichushkin off your hands. Could that be the way that it happens? And then that team they're still getting I don't want to say a hefty contract. It's $6.1 million. That's not the end of the world for some teams out there. But we saw the moves people were making yesterday. There's already so much money that's soaked up into free agency. Does anybody have that left right now? Maybe. I haven't gone through every team, but I think that maybe the Avs tried to do that beforehand, before free agency started, to get his cap number on somebody else's books right away before all these signings went in onto these books. And they just might be stuck. And if they're stuck, what in the world are they going to do, man? I can't figure it. Like, the Avalanche have really never been in this situation. I can't remember of needing to sign this many guys with this little money, basically no money, and you're going to go over the cap, and you're allowed that right now. But man, when it comes down to it, they have to figure out how to move a contract. And if it can't be Val, do they just have to move one of those guys that we mentioned, because they got to get compliant somehow, some way? And if they try day in and day out to move Val and it's just not happening, one of these other guys might be collateral damage, and that's just unfair to them.
Or start the season with Gabriel Landeskog on the LTIR, and don't bring him back until trade deadline, until they can clear this up.
But it doesn't work that way with LTIR. It's because if he can play, he has to play. The league monitors that. And we always rip on like Vegas and stuff like that for putting players on LTIR, and they do. But the league supposedly monitors this stuff. And if you have a guy on LTIR and he is capable of playing, he has to play. You can't just dump him on LTIR because you want to save the money. You can't do it that way.
It's one of those with the Landeskog thing. It's been years since he's been able to play.
Yeah.
Can you justify saying, because the Avs have to do something, and if you can't move pieces, because you can't have addition by subtraction, and you can't subtract any more roster spots from this team than you currently have, it's going to have to be something like Landy going, just saying year 3, we're going to flush this down the tube until you're 110% ready to play, and we're going to have to play with the LTIR and that money to put this team together and figure it out through the season. When somebody starts out in the first 10 games and their season's on the slide, trade out some contracts, try and alleviate that, and then address Landy later. But that might be the option they have to go.
I mean, you could lie and just, I mean, because he's been out for 2 years and just be like, he's not ready yet. Like he's been testing. He's not, you know, if you've been out for 2 years and you're expecting a guy to go back in and play the game of hockey, that's a big ask. So you want to make sure he's not going to, you know, his career is going to be over the first hit he takes. I don't know, man. It's, I guess you could lie and just put him on there for what? But he wants to play.
Is it
He's
a
not
lie?
going to sit on, huh?
Is it a lie?
I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But
The truth is out there.
He's not going to sit out any longer than he's had. He's been out for 2 years. You're telling me Gabe Landeskog's going to be like, yeah, keep me out another 4 months? Like, no, he's ready to go. Well, he's not ready to go. You know what I mean? Like he when he's ready to go, he's going to be ready to go.
Well, you can't.
I don't know,
put him out
man.
there
Like,
and double shift him.
no. This is we knew this was going to be an interesting offseason. It's weird because like it was a good day for the Avs because they signed needs. I'm not sold on all of them, but the ones that I'm not sold on are not going to be with the team all year long. Like Jacob McDonald's not, TJ Tynan's not, Callie Rosen's not, and the ones that are with your Parker Kelly, Calvin DeHaan, Kiviranta, I think those are good, decent, low money signings for what they need. But everything else is just like, man, like it's the fascination has just begun.
Yeah,
for the Avs in this offseason. So what could these lines look like? What we have so far? What do we think? We'll do that next. All right. So a lot of signings, miraculously still work to do, but with what the Avs have right now, what could I want to say opening night roster, which by the way, we know will be against the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas. I think that's was that the 10th? I think it was October 10th. And then 2 days later is their home opener against Columbus of all teams. So we're not getting the Blackhawks at home to start the season, which is nice. But you're getting Columbus, just I don't know, a weird opener for the Avs. Let's not put, because we know he's not going to be there. We know Valentin is not going to be there for opening night. But why don't we put Gabe Landeskog in there for opening day against Vegas? Let's throw him in there because that's a possibility. What do you think? What's your lines looking?
He's line 2. It's going to be Drouin, Nate, and Mikko. Line 1.
Mm-hmm.
Line 2. Because I know line 3 is going to be the Roaring 20. Like,
I think that's what you should do. Yeah.
And then you'll probably have like Kovalenko and Kiviranta on line 4. You got Lehkonen, Landy, line 2, and
Middlestat. Okay. And then you got Roaring 20s for third line, right?
Yeah.
So your fourth line is, you said Kovalenko?
I would put Kovalenko, Kiviranta, possibly.
You have, I mean, you just signed Kelly.
Is that where you want to go?
Parker Kelly? Yeah.
Do you not want to hold on to Parker for a little bit and see if you
what and put him down in the minors? No, he's beyond that.
Well, then you'll put Parker Kelly at line 4 with Kiviranta and Kovalenko.
I think that's you know who we're forgetting here, dude? Logan O'Connor. Or no, you said he's in the Roaring 20s. Right? Okay, so we do have him back. Okay, because I'm looking at the Puckpedia and he's down in the injured reserve.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start at the beginning again. So you got Drouin, McKinnon, and Rantanen. You think that's your top line?
That's a lot,
and we're pretty solid with that. Middlestat centering your second line. Lehkonen is there, and Gabe second line.
Yeah.
So yeah, then roaring 20s. You got Wood, Colton, and O'Connor. And then yeah, your fourth line, Kovalenko, Parker Kelly, and
Kiviranta.
Kiviranta. That's a pretty solid 4-line shifters right there.
And honestly, depending on what happens and what they have to do with contracts, could you just not replace Nuke and Landy? Depending.
So say that again. If
they
had
do
to replace them,
if they do go darkest timeline and play with the LTIR, and it's Nuke coming back and not Landy, would you
put Nuke in? Like if Landy's on not available longer than when Nuke comes back, so Landy's beyond the middle of November, it's the earliest, then yeah, I think you just swap those two guys out.
And then you'll put up an Eagle until whoever comes back comes back.
If for who?
For either that Landy Nuke spot.
If they're both out, you mean?
Yeah. Because you're not getting Nuke until November. You're not getting Landy until ?
Who knows? Yeah. So say they're both out. Well, we don't want to. So say Landeskog's out for the first game. Then who's in that spot? Then you got to move stuff around, and maybe you bring up who you bring up Wood to the second line.
This will be your Vegas roster. This will be your Vegas opening night roster because you're not getting Nuke, and you don't know about Landy.
Yep. I think that's where it gets. Yeah, you probably bring up maybe like Foodie. I'm expecting more from him this year.
I am too. That was the name I was going to bring up earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, he is a center. I know he did play wing in the few games that he did come up. But who do you move around? Do you bring Wood up to the second line? Do you bring O'Connor up to the second line? Do you throw Kovalenko in there right off the bat and have Foodie be because if Parker Kelly's your center, but Parker Kelly can play wing as well. So maybe put Foodie in as the fourth line center, move Kelly over to the wing, bring up either Wood or Kovalenko.
I would probably bring up Kovalenko just to see. And didn't Jacob McDonald do a little of both? He played defense and forward. So you can bring him in to play on that fourth line too.
And signing Drouin, really only leaves you with one spot that you need to fill on the defensive end, because you got Makar and Taves, Girard and Manson, Drouin, and who? Probably Malinsky.
Yeah, Malinsky.
And I think that's a pretty solid D-core. So as it sits right now, that all the signings that they made today fills out for the most part with the question of Landeskog. Your opening night roster, everything else that they need to fill out for the roster is fill in. So it's not going to cost you a lot. Again, it goes back to what we were just talking about. What you need to still have to sign won't cost you a lot, but you don't have that a lot.
Yeah.
You don't have it to sign. So it again, it's going to get kind of interesting. But as that stands, I don't hate that. I don't hate that lineup.
No, it's a good roster to get going. And again, everybody on this roster, with the exception of Parker Kelly, has an understanding on how to operate in this Avalanche system. So that's a little bit ahead of the curve, where you didn't have that last year going into the beginning of the year, where it was a bunch of really big names that didn't understand the system. Now you have a lot of lesser known names that do know the system.
And you're going to need them to know the system, because the Central got pretty strong.
Yeah.
With some of the signings. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. But, what the Avs have, are they, can they be in that mix? Yeah, I definitely think so. But I think that's something that we'll cover on tomorrow's episode. So tune in to that. That's going to wrap this one up, everybody. So thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And he is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.